How do you take motivational and inspirational principles in one of your presentations and extend the lasting capacity of it?
I like to call them signal moments. If you could say something that really gets under somebody's skin that they never forget, that becomes a principle that they live by, that has a positive impact on their career, not for a day or two, but forever, that makes a difference.
Welcome to the Business Builders Playbook, the show that breaks down the systems and strategies behind predictable revenue growth to win in business. In each episode, we're diving into the proven strategies that separate the winners who scale from the losers who fail. This show is sponsored by BDR.ai, the AI-powered business development platform that automates your outbound prospecting so you can focus in on closing deals instead of chasing leads. Let's get started. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to get an opportunity to interview my good friend Don Hutson. Many of you have heard of him before as a best-known speaker, best-selling author, and so many things in between. And I can't wait to get caught up and to share some of the pearls of wisdom that Don has about scaling sales, being a leader, helping to understand a little bit about his background, his experiences, and where he's at today and where he's going. So Don, thanks so much for joining me today.
David, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to jump on in. So kind of catch us up on where you've been and where you are today.
Well, I'm still energized about professional speaking and writing and working on a new book, and just did a new sizzle video reel for my speakers bureaus and direct clients. And I'm still engaged in that part of the business. I did have an interesting thing happen. You know, when the pandemic hit, that was almost a death knell for speakers because all the meetings canceled. Of course, we pivoted a bit and figured out ways to do some meetings online and that type thing. But it was about that time that a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, I've got a vision for starting a software company, but I'm not going to do it without you." Anyway, I invested and ended up being executive VP and chief operating officer of the software company. So that's been my focus primarily for the past 5 years. But it filled a beautiful void since the pandemic slowed the speaking down anyway. So I've been learning new space, and it's been absolutely rejuvenating. I actually know some things about artificial intelligence, and we're seeing some really cool things happen. I'm not trying to impress you, David. I'm not writing any code or anything of that nature. We've got some brilliant people in our technical department who are doing that. But we've been building this company, and it's been a lot of fun and very educational for me to get back into the fray of building a traditional company rather than just being a speaker and consultant.
Well, I think it's great to be able to be back into the war zone, so to speak, is that you're not just telling people, how to improve and how to close more sales, how to do it better. You're actually doing it yourself and probably learning some new skill sets and learning some new strategies that are going to be able to be so applicable as you continue to share inside your writing and your speaking. So, you've written quite a few books, over a dozen different books, couple of New York Times bestsellers, Wall Street Journal bestsellers. And so talk about the content of the past and where you see the content of the future, kind of building a bridge between all of those great, amazing books that I cut my teeth on back in the 90s and 2000s. I read so many of those things and they were so helpful, but where do you see your content in the future? Is it updating and abridging those, or do you have some new ideas and strategies you want to share?
Well, great question, David. And I'm always updating. I've been a voracious reader all my adult life, and I continue to really study the craft of especially professional selling, but other aspects of business success as well. I've been primarily known as a sales trainer for many years, and have really written books about sales. I came out with The Sale in 1992, which was a top-selling book. And in the about 2010, I came out with my book, Selling Value, which kind of took the sale to a more sophisticated level and had a lot of good information in that book about differentiation and how we separate ourselves from the crowd and all these things that are critical today in this competitive environment we're a part of. In addition to you mentioned the bestseller, Ken Blanchard and I wrote The 1 Minute Entrepreneur in 2008. And it was a number one bestseller, New York Times and Wall Street Journal for 6 weeks. A couple of years later, I followed up with The 1 Minute Negotiator, which I wrote with George Lucas. It also hit the list for several weeks, so we got a good run out of that one as well. But today, I'm primarily a sales and negotiation trainer. Do speak some on leadership, but that's about the extent of it. But continue to expand my horizon in all those topical areas so I can maximize my value to my clients.
Absolutely. Well, I want to jump into a couple of different questions that I have. I mean, you've delivered thousands of presentations around the world. I mean, you've been award winner. You've been in the speakers roundtable. I mean, you've got all the prestigious awards and showing your credibility and edifying your experience and expertise in delivering these amazing presentations. But I'm just curious to know, for those others that are out there, what makes the difference between a good presentation and an extraordinary presentation? Anything that you could share with us?
Well, I've got a couple of ideas on that, and it's so hard to work on standing out from the crowd, but it's imperative that we do that if we want to make an impact on the marketplace or just be another speaker. And there's thousands and thousands of speakers out there, so we need to stand out when we can. So I think one thing, David, is to continue to work on the craft of professional speaking. Everything we can possibly learn that can hone the edges, even to a small degree, can make a big or a measurable difference over time. I know years ago we hired the acting coach from London, Ron Arden, to come to our speakers roundtable meeting and hang out with us for 3 days. And we each did about a 12-minute presentation. And then we all learned, as we listened to him critique each of us, we learned not only from our critique, but the critique of each other. And that was an incredible learning experience. That's where I really learned how to pause. I used to be such a rapid-fire deliverer of my content. I know when I did my 12 minutes for Ron Arden, I got through and I sat down and he's thinking, and he said, "Don, that was masterful, but I'm exhausted from listening to it." And that's when he talked to me about the importance of the pause, because I just went too hard and fast. And I got away with it, and I was known as a very good speaker and everything, but I became better after the coaching experience. So we can never quit learning. We can never quit gaining insights into our craft. And I would say that's one of the things that really does make a difference. I also speak a good bit about differentiation, and that's important for salespeople, sales organizations, but it's also important for speakers. And one of the critical things for speaking is we've got to have some really powerful trademark stories. Hopefully not just one, but I've got several that I've gotten a great deal of mileage out of that I'm known for. I actually had an experience not too terribly long ago where I did a speech for a company, and they had their 500 branch managers in the audience, and it went very well. And I told my story. I closed with my signature story of my jet trip to Kentucky. And 7 years later, the chairman of the board of that company said to his secretary, who happened to remember my name, fortunately, he said, "I don't remember his name, but get that speaker we had a few years ago who talked about his jet trip to Kentucky." Well, she remembered my name and got in touch with me, and they hired me again. I went back and did another speech for her. But that's an example of how powerful a signature story can be. He remembered the story and the point of the story. He did not remember my name. So that's a critical learning point, I think, for speakers. You've got to have some things that can represent a signal moment in your delivery that really have an impact on people. And that'll make a big difference. That's one way we can be remembered. And again, differentiating ourselves in every way we can to be unique, to be memorable, to be impacting. I spoke at NSA. I was the closing keynote speaker a few weeks ago. And one of the points that I made had to do with the idea that we've got to nurture a level of excitement. If we're going to be successful motivational speakers, we've got to get people to change behavior. We've got to get people to ramp up their passion factor. And if they'll do that, they'll put more skill on the street. They'll make more calls. They'll be more effective and indeed enjoy a greater level of success.
So if this show is resonating with you and you're ready to take action because you want to scale your business faster, smarter, with more AI and technology and less labor, check out BDR.ai. We help entrepreneurs and executive sales leaders to automate the grind of prospecting so you can focus your time on closing deals and growing revenue where you should be spending your time. With AI-powered data, digital outreach automation, and done-for-you prospecting systems, you'll connect with more qualified leads, book more appointments, and build predictable revenue without adding more hours to your week or the week of your staff. Visit BDR today and discover how our AI Prospect Finder and digital BDR agents can help you to build your pipeline and your profits. Visit BDR.ai, where business builders learn how to automate and scale their playbook. With over 5,000 or more presentations and workshops, and speaking on some of the stages with some of the icons like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn. I remember Jim Rohn used to make a comment back in the day. He'd say, I'd hate to be, in a position where you come and see one of my presentations 10 years later, and you'd say, well, you think that he would have gotten better than he is today, or he was a lot better 10 years ago. And so, just like a fine wine, to get better with age. So I'm excited to hear some of the new content that you're coming up with. But any other things that you learned from being on the stages with the greatest that are out there? And again, you've shared the stage with so many of them. Any memorable takeaways that you could share that you've implemented into your speaking skills?
Yeah, I've got a few of those, David. Of course, I want to say that I'm very thankful. I was so fortunate to get an earlier start in this business. Right out of college, I went to work selling sales training programs, and we had to give speeches to small groups to do that. So when I was in my early 20s, I started giving 30-minute talks. I did about 1,500 of them in 4 or 5 years, and that's how I really learned to speak. And that was in concert with promoting sales rallies. So I got an early start in the business, and in my business of promoting sales rallies and selling tickets to these events, I would bring in Cavett Robert, Bill Gove, Zig Ziglar, Dr. Kenneth McFarland, some of the real greats who I consider all of those gentlemen my mentors. I learned from each of them for sure. But then Cavett Robert said to me one day, Don, he came to hear me do a couple of those little 30-minute meetings. He said, Don, man, you're really good. And I found out later he told a lot of people that. But nevertheless, he was the prime encourager of the business back in those days. And Cavett and I became very close. He was definitely a mentor. I learned so much from him about everything from humor to delivery to growing your content and to marketing my services. And he did some mailings for me to his meeting planner list and helped me get started with my early bookings in the business. But then I got another good break. I was on the original speaker staff as the MC of the positive thinking rallies with Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and Paul Harvey and Art Linkletter and W. Clement Stone, Dr. Robert Schuller. And I was introducing all these guys. I've introduced Dr. Peale probably 40 times, and we became close personal friends. And the same with Paul Harvey and the others. And what a great opportunity. So I was the MC for a couple of years. Then I worked my way onto the main stage, and that was a great boon to my career. One of the things I would say that I've learned in my recent reading, I love the book, The One Thing, about prioritization by Gary Keller. And he and Jay in that book said, we must remember that important events in our career do not happen simultaneously. They happen sequentially. Sometimes one happens because another preceded it and it paved the way to the next level of achievement. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I didn't even realize it at the time. But when I learned that principle from Keller and Papazan, I looked back and I thought, well, that's what happened to me when I got started my first decade in the business. I had about 5 or 6 noteworthy things that happened to me, each of which boosted my career another notch. Like Cabot got me in the chairs to be the 3rd president of the National Speakers Association. I wasn't even 30 years old yet. So that's an example of some things that happened to me early that boosted my career and gave me a little punch at a time when I really could use it. So that helped immensely. So I learned all I could from the greats, and I enjoyed friendships with many of them, and I treasure those opportunities, though most of those guys are gone now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you do extensive research when you go out there and do a private booking and do a presentation for an organization. But if you were to give kind of a general insight as to what you would share with a audience of sellers that need to be motivated, encouraged, edified, maybe helping them with their mindset, their skill set, their action, what would be the one thing, going back to Keller's book, what would be the one thing that you would really feel needs to be a part of your presentation, assuming that, you get customization afterwards, but what's that one thing that Don Hutson wants to transfer in to this next generation of sellers that's a timeless truth?
Sure. Well, David, I don't have to think that one over. The answer is you've got to be an absolute bear about needs analysis, about information gathering. Because there's nothing worse than a speaker who's got lame content or tired material and goes in there and gives the same talk he's been given for many years. Now, sure, there's some concepts you'll repeat and hopefully improve the delivery of some of that content over the years. But we've got to be absolutely energized about doing a great needs analysis with every client we serve. So I would say to the speakers who might be viewing this, or actually salespeople as well, when you're trying to close a sale, it all begins with the research you're going to do. So here are the elements that I would ask speakers, sales professionals to keep in mind as they're trying to advance their career and get yeses in the marketplace. Number one is let it be known early on that you are eager to do a needs analysis. And that tells your prospect that it's not about you, it's about them. And that is a critical mindset for them to have. So many speakers and great salespeople today have a little bit too much ego, and they put that out front, and it does not serve them well. I've been guilty of that some through the years. So let's let it be known early that we're eager to do a needs analysis to make sure we're going to conscientiously tailor our message, our product, our solution to what it is that they really want and need that's going to make a difference for them. So that's the mindset early on about needs analysis. Next, I would suggest that you remember the principle that the better and more in-depth the questions you ask, the better and more in-depth the answers you will get. Take notes when you're doing a needs analysis. Take diligent notes. Every now and then you need to say, that's interesting. Could you elaborate on that a bit? And you take the depth of information you're getting to another level. So probe and gain all the valuable information you possibly can. And as you do that, you're going to be put into a position to tailor your presentation. I like to say it this way, David. A great salesperson increases the probability of getting a yes because if he does a really great needs analysis, he will ultimately deliver a sales presentation his prospect helped him design. And you get better response to a presentation your prospect helped you design.
Mm.
Our mutual friend Jim Cathcart had a wonderful line. He said, in selling like in medicine, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do the diagnosis, and that's our needs analysis. For the salesperson or the speaker who says, let me tell you about you, or let me tell you about our company, let me tell you about me, let me tell you about our products, let me tell you. These are speakers and salespeople who are setting themselves up for rejection. And the reason is it's got to be about them and not about you. So we just say things like, well, I'm pleased to be able to tell you a little bit about what I'll be able to do for you. But first, I want to learn more about you and the the issues and challenges you've got right now and some of the needs that you perceive that you and your people have so that I can have a greater positive impact through my presentation. He said, okay, if I ask you some questions. So we get permission to do the needs analysis, and then we start asking some really great questions.
That's so good. I love the, finding the, the why and the what and the who and the when and the where before we get into the how. And so many people are being prompted for the answer to how. How does it work and how much does it cost? And we can be very reactive to that. But flipping that around and answering a question with a question is a great strategy to move into that needs analysis or to schedule that follow-up time. I'm curious to know, like
David, and one of the other things that is especially good for speakers is to say to the meeting planner, by the way, I'm not only eager to talk to you today, but I'm also ready, willing, and able to talk to 5 or 6 of the people who will be in the audience that day. I'd like to get their take on current events as well. Is it okay if I talk to some of them? Well, they're eager to have me do that because it's just going to help me get to know them and their organization better and better.
Yeah. So, a lot of organizations and associations that are going to bring in a speaker, they want somebody to inspire and motivate their team. What unique capabilities do you bring to the table to not just give people that short-term motivation, but to, get it so it comes home and it lasts and it sticks more like principles than just this, Zig used to say, motivation's like bathing. It only works when you do it often, or if you don't do it often, life begins to stink or something like that. So how do you take motivational and inspirational principles in one of your presentations and extend the lasting capacity of it?
I like to call them signal moments. If you could say something that really gets under somebody's skin that they never forget, that becomes a principle that they live by, that has a positive impact on their career, not for a day or two, but forever, that makes a difference. I gave an example of a signal moment. When I was in college, right before I graduated, I went to a sales rally where Dr. Kenneth McFarland was speaking. I don't know if you remember that name or if you ever heard him, David, but he was known as the Dean of American Speakers. He was unbelievably powerful from the platform. And he was 6'4", totally distinguished, eloquent in every way, profound in his content. His delivery was electrifying. I got to tell you, I'm sitting there 21 years old, and I got goosebumps like 6 or 8 times during his speech. Man, I'm taking notes. I'm getting writer's cramp writing down his information. I was profoundly impacted to the degree that I went out at the break and I found Dick Gardner, the guy who promoted the seminar. I walked up to him. I said, Mr. Gardner, I'm Don Hutson. I graduate in 6 weeks with a major in sales from the University of Memphis. I want to go to work for you. I can help you sell people on attending your seminars. He said, well, can you go to breakfast with me, meet me at 7 a.m. in the morning? I said, yes, sir. And I did, and he'd hired me by 9:30 a.m. But that's when I learned, when I heard McFarland, and I got those goosebumps, David, that's when I learned that I was experiencing a signal moment. I learned that goosebumps never lie. That's your heartstrings tugging at your soul, telling you to reach up and grab the rest of your destiny. Now, that has a lasting impact because I didn't know what to expect going to that seminar, and I didn't have a full-time job yet for when I graduated. And, man, I was primed and ready, and when I heard McFarland, my life changed. So now that's changing an audience member's life at a very high level. And I'm not suggesting everybody can achieve that kind of impact, but that's what we need to aspire to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that those signaling moments, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes those signaling moments happen in the pause. And so a skilled speaker that learns to bring those pauses in at the right time after a signaling experience can really transcend what is being shared at that particular time. And sometimes when you're rapid fire, you don't give people to have that thought or that idea or that motivational principle that comes in and sets in their life. And some people just need that opportunity. And so I'm glad you brought that to the table. How about a
Right. You got to give them a moment to reflect and think about what they're hearing.
absolutely. How about from your content? You've offered over a dozen books. What are some specific principles from the books that you've written that seem to have the biggest impact on your audiences? Is there one or two that you could reference?
Well, in my sales negotiations material, I think if you really consider it, David, all of us have to negotiate just about every day, whether it's with your dry cleaner about when your cleaning is going to be ready, or whether it's with your spouse about where you're going for dinner, or regardless of what it is, we negotiate many times every day. Yet over 95% of the people, the adults in America today, have never ever read a book or had any training on negotiations, which is a shame because it's such a critical part of our lives. It's so important that we really need to have that training. When I started researching negotiations some 25 years ago, I read just about every book that's out there. And boy, there's a great variability of opinion about how you negotiate. A lot of people are hardline negotiators, and they say you got to do this, you got to do that, and it's hardline. And there's a place for that. We call that competitive negotiating, and sometimes that's where you got to go. But so many people have never even really learned the skills of collaborative negotiations. And instead of a win-lose hardline approach, it's more of a win-win. Let's figure out something's going to work well for both of us. So in the 1 Minute Negotiator, we taught collaborative skills. And that's really important. And things like I mentioned the needs analysis earlier, those are the things that will help you facilitate a collaborative relationship rather than something that's confrontational. So that's one example. There are many others, but that's one that comes to the top of my mind early on.
Yeah. Well, what's one of the most memorable experiences where the audience just was transformed by something that you shared or an experience that you had together? Anything over the years that just is a memorable experience that you could share? I'm just curious.
David, I would think one of my attributes as a professional speaker is I'm high energy, and I seem to have the ability to transfer that energy to other people in a positive way. And that's the reason I've always gotten a lot of repeat business. I love to ask my client, how do you want your people to feel after this meeting's over? And they say things like, well, I want them to be pumped up, ready to go to the next level. I said, okay, I can do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So high energy is important. There can be someone whose IQ is off the chart, but if they're not an energizing speaker and they speak in a monotone, they might say some profound things, but they're not going to have as great an impact. They're not memorable.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's a key factor.
Yeah. I got one more question for you on the topic of events and speaking, and that is, if you could give a event organizer or a leader that's putting together an event 3 tips that, based upon your previous experience and the testimonials of the others that you've had a chance to communicate and have conversation with, what are the 2 or 3 things that event organizers should be really focusing in on to deliver an extraordinary experience for people that participate, other than hiring Don Hutson? I know that's number 1, but what are a couple other things that are just based on experiences?
A speaker knows what he or she needs in terms of the environment they want and what and how they structure things to be their best. And I would say to a meeting planner, tell that speaker any and everything you want to tell him or her about your needs and all that sort of thing. But when it comes to creating the right environment and the idiosyncrasies of that speaker, if you want your speaker to be the best, give them the opportunity to be their best by giving them the environment they want. For example, I don't like a totally dark house working under total spotlights where I can't see any audience members. So I say to a meeting planner, do you plan to have a dark house, or are you going to have some house lights on? And sometimes they say, well, we do a dark house. And sometimes they say, well, what do you want? And what I tell them is I'd like to have at least, if you want to do 80% dark, give me 20% light so I can see the audience. And you still got it dark enough that, the videotape's going to look good and the dynamics of the whole meeting will be effective. But you don't need a totally dark house. I mean, that's Hollywood, and that's fine. But most speakers like to look into the eyes of their audience members. They play off of them. And everything considered, most speakers are going to do a little bit better job and come across as more powerful if they can see the eyes of their audience members. So that's an example. Give the speaker what they need on the stage to be their best. That'd be one thing. Another thing is be ready, willing, and able to get engaged in that needs analysis process. Because there's some speakers like myself, I take it very seriously. And I don't develop the content I'm going to use until I've done that needs analysis. And then I know the vignettes I'm going to deploy. I know the humor that I'm going to use. And I sometimes craft some new material for that meeting based on a special need they've got. So that's kind of what I did for NSA a couple of weeks ago. I had never given that speech before. It was like 95% new material. And it went over really well, but I got to tell you, I worked hard on it for months. But that's what you got to do. The great speakers make their presentation look easy, but it's usually based on a lot of research.
Yeah. So, a good takeaway would be beware of the speaker that you talk to that doesn't ask for a needs analysis, because you're going to be prepared to be surprised. Well, I want to dive into this new role that you've been participating in with benefits claims assistance. Is that correct?
Benefits claims intelligence.
Intelligence, yes.
Yeah, it
benefit claims intelligence.
We develop software that can identify fraud, waste, and abuse in self-insured healthcare plans. And the problem is rampant. And we can spot all of the claims that are improperly adjudicated, all the monies that a company will have lost, or monies that have been misappropriated by wrongdoing. We can find every bit of it. And that's what our AI-based software can do, and our sharp people in our technical department. And we provide that information for the client based on our audit. Then we help them recoup that money, of which we get a small percentage and they get the bulk of the money. And that's how the software works. It's been a fascinating space for me. So I've been in sales, but also on the operational side, I've been busy with that as well. So a real learning experience for me. But I talked to one of my bureaus yesterday I'm re-engaging with. He said, Don, man, I know you've been out of the speaking marketplace a bit for the last 5 years, but what you've been doing is what our clients are looking for. They want speakers who've got real world experience. And I said, well, man, I've got that.
Absolutely. So
that's going to help
the people that are talking to you about this service. Is that high level CFO, CEOs? I mean, who's the target market for the software services?
We generally call on the CFO because they're the ones who are primarily concerned about fiduciary responsibility, and the people within a company there's a legal requirement and responsibility that they are involved in careful oversight of their healthcare plan. If they're not doing anything to assure there's no misappropriation of funds, they're violating the law. They're not following through on their fiduciary responsibility. So we start with the CFO, and sometimes they'll refer us then to their chief HR officer, and that's who works with the third-party administrators on claims adjudications and everything. So we've got it down to a science as to how we do it, and we think we do it better than anybody else. But we've helped a lot of clients. It feels really good.
And this software is not just for cost containment; it's actually for strategic budgeting and forecasting. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits than just collecting on some potential benefits from.
David, you're right in that there's software that does that. We don't get engaged in that type of software. The software business today is incredibly specialized, and we specialize in claims adjudication research and audit. But we do that really well. We go very deep. And it's an exciting time because AI it just continues to emerge. And now we've got the convergence of AI with robotics, and we're going to see things in the next few years that are just absolutely amazing. We're starting to see it already, but my home base is Memphis, and Elon Musk recently opened his XAI plant here to create the Colossus computer. It's amazing. This guy, to me, is the modern day Thomas Edison. Just never seen anything like his intelligence and his ability to go deep on these areas that he's working in. If he decides to specialize in something like rocket ships, and he could figure out how to not only launch a spaceship, but bring one back into the launch pad for continued use after being launched. I mean, that's uncanny. It's amazing. So all of these things are coming together in a manner that the technical world is, it's not going like that. It's going like that.
Right.
And it's a really exciting time. So I've enjoyed the software business. I've learned from it. I've grown. I think it keeps me young, keeps me studying, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple more questions for you. So when you're in the thralls of working with these CFOs, what are some of the common problems that you're hearing from these CFOs or the senior level directors that are like commonplace that your solution and your software is immediately going to provide a benefit to them in the very near future?
One of the most common ones, David, is an employee of a big company, a person who's in their healthcare plan will be injured, and let's say it's not a very serious injury, but enough so that they go to the emergency room. Well, emergency room visits are classified in 5 categories based on severity. Number 1 being the least severe, and number 5 being life-threatening. It's very common that somebody will go into the emergency room for what is a category 2 in seriousness issue and get charged for a category 4. We see that every day. And that over time adds up to a tremendous amount of money. So there are people who are untoward in their objectives, and whether you call it skimming money here and there or whether you call it theft, there are some people who are taking advantage of the opportunity to do that, which is costing a healthcare plan. CMS.gov, the government agency who monitors this, recently said that there's 13.8% fraud, waste, and abuse in the typical self-insured healthcare plan in a given year. Well, if somebody's got $100 million a year spend, that's $13.8 million. That's not something you want to blow off and say everything will be fine. You want to do something about that, and we can help people get most of that money back.
Fantastic. That's a great solution. Yeah, that's definitely worth pursuing. So I want to wrap up today, and I want you just to give everyone that's watching this video an insight into Don Hutson's success formula. Would you mind sharing that with us?
I'd love to. I developed a success formula not long ago based on the idea that everybody has got a deviation between their potential and their performance. And conscientious managers and leaders are looking for ways to close that gap and get more out of their people. And most people want to grow and get better. So how can we be our best? Here's a formula that I developed. Now, this kind of goes beyond having a good attitude. I mean, you got to have a good attitude and believe in yourself. And that's kind of the ticket to the ball game. A cynic or a pessimist is not going to do well in the marketplace. They don't expect anything good to happen, and they're seldom disappointed. So assuming we've got a good, healthy, positive attitude, my formula is vision plus skill plus discipline. Those 3 in parentheses, they interact with each other. Vision, we got to see the big picture. We got to see with clarity what we're trying to achieve, what our boss wants us to achieve, and we've got to be tuned into that. And then we've got to have the appropriate skill sets. You know, none of us can perform beyond our intellect or our skill base. So we've always got to be focused on skill building. Now, discipline means that on a day-to-day basis, we've got to work hard, we got to work smart, we got to put our skill on the street, we got to be disciplined enough to make the calls, talk to the people, and be the best we can be. So those three elements are all key. Now, here's the rest of the formula. Vision plus skill plus discipline, in parentheses, times passion equals results. Passion, David, is the force multiplier. The more passion somebody's got about getting something done, the more of those skills they're going to be utilizing, the more calls they're going to be making, the harder they're going to be working, the more determined they become. So that passion factor, which I referred to earlier, if we can get that passion factor through a signal moment and a speech by a great speaker, boy, I tell you, that company's going to get a tremendous return on their investment in that speaker, because the passion factor is the force multiplier that determines the true effectiveness and general overall productivity of a person, or for that matter, a sales organization. So vision plus skill plus discipline times passion equals results. That's my success formula, and that's what I try to apply to every presentation I give, is to weave the attributes of those elements into a speech or a seminar.
That's fantastic. So if those people that are watching this video right now, if they want to increase their vision, they want to increase their skills and their discipline, and they definitely want to create the force multiplier of passion to improve their results, whether it's with an upcoming event or them personally, or if it's a company that wants to connect with you, what's the best place to reach out to you?
DonHutson.com is my website, and it's Hutson with a T, as you know. And people can reach me through that website. I'm also active on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. But I'm not that hard to find. The phone number, if you want it, David, is 901-292-8533. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you betcha. Well, it's been good to reconnect with you, my friend. I'm excited for the future. There's so many applicable things that we've shared here today in this short time together, but I'm excited for those organizations and individuals that reach out to partner with you. So many opportunities and all of your wisdom and experience and expertise. Super excited to hear about what's next for you.
Thanks, David, and you keep doing your work well, man. You're having a real impact with all you're doing with LinkedIn and helping people on a consulting basis. So keep up the great work, man.
Thanks, my man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Builders Playbook. If this episode gave you some plays that you can start running in your business today, hit subscribe and share with another revenue leader who's tired of the pipeline grind. Building predictable revenue isn't something you figure out alone. Whether you're looking to automate your prospecting with BDR.ai, or you just want to talk through the growth challenges you're facing, reach out. We help business leaders just like you to build systems that actually scale. And if you're ready to stop being your company's highest paid prospector, let's have a conversation. Reach out to us at BDR.ai. Until next time, let's keep building.